Buddy, welcome back to the channel. Today we're back again with the Freewing F14 Tomcat. So there it is behind me. So let me turn the camera around and show you what's going on. Okay, so I currently have both fans installed with the RC Geek center burners. I've also installed some high-tech digital servos in the place of the factory ones. Now on my original F14, I had all stock servos, and I had 100-something flights on that airplane, and it flew a lot. And it never gave me any problems. They were a little sloppy, but I never had any issues. But just to be on the safe side, these are definitely the most important control surfaces on the airplane. They are big, which means they have a lot of load on them. And because I'm running a little more power than the original setup, I figured it'd just be safe. So we got some high-tech digitals in there. They're very tight and slot-free. Another thing I've done here with the afterburner units and all the wires coming out is I've taken off the factory heat shrink, which is, it basically puts the wires flat like this to the airflow, and I've made them into like an airfoil shape with some tape with the afterburner light signal wire coming out, so it's flat and it's, you know, should be a little less restrictive on the thrust. I've also sealed off this area right here with hot glue. The reason is, from the factory, these are just open, so granted, you're probably not getting a lot of flow through here, but I'm sure you're losing some thrust. Same thing goes for this servo area. So once I install the hatch for the final time, as you see, I've taped over part of the servo, but what I'll do is I'll reach in through the back with a stick and I'll put a piece of tape to seal off the rest of this servo in here. And for the same reason, from the factory, these are kind of open and you can get thrust blowing out of there. Granted, like I said, it's probably not a lot, but I don't like to throw away performance. So that's where I'm at with that. I got all my wires ran through into the top side. These are the Freewing 100 amp ESCs that I've hot glued into place. Instead of being on the floor where the original ones are, and this whole thing has like grates all over it and doesn't look very nice. So what I plan to do is this will be all solid, and then there'll be just a small cutout around the ESC for cooling, and that should be plenty of cooling, and it'll look a lot nicer and probably be a lot less drag than the original graded sheet that goes in here. I also plan on putting some screen over my ducts because I fly off of dirt most of the time, and that has a way of ruining fans very quickly, especially as low as the Tomcat sits, and the nose gear pretty much kicks up dirt right into this area. So I didn't run screens on my original one for a while, and the fans took it okay, but that was the older fan units, and those are pretty beefy. These aren't quite as solid, I should say, the fan rotors. So anyways, so those are some of the mods I'm doing. For some reason my LED, my landing light's not working. Didn't work on my F18 either, so I'm gonna have to look in and, you know, look into that, figure it out. So another thing I've done with the tailpipes is line them with aluminum tape. This does a couple of things. It makes for a nice smooth surface inside, but more importantly, because I have the afterburner lights, it reflects the light completely and doesn't allow any of it to go through the fuselage. But also it concentrates the light throughout the back, and it's extremely bright. You'll see once I have it all put together, and I'll do a test on it, and I'll show you guys. But you should be able to see those very well in broad daylight. And let's show you something else I'm doing as a little bit of a modification. So these are the factory the elevator pivot rods for the F14. And you see I've got a couple over here that have slight bends in them. So the real F14, it has a slight amount of anhedral in the stabs, which means they sit down a little bit like this. Not as much as an F16, which is pretty far down, but they're not flat either like the factory has these set up for the Freewing. They have just a little bit. I don't know what the exact measurement is. I've been looking at pictures and stuff. It's maybe 3-4 degrees of down. So anyways, and these are made out of steel. So these are aluminum, and like I said, they worked on the stock one. I'm sure they're fine. But on my first F14, I actually bent these to do the same thing, and I always kind of worried about it because you're really not supposed to bend aluminum, especially when it's like a cast piece like this. So yeah, it's not a good idea. They'll probably crack and fail eventually. I never had issues with mine. Like I said, I flew it a ton. But I figured to be safe, I would use some of this. It's like a piano wire, and I made the flat spots for the set screws to hold it in place. So I just got to install those, get the stabs on, all the stab hardware and all that stuff. So that's where we're at as far as modifications go. As you can see, the surface is really smooth. This is with the primer sealer on it. So once I get the airplane flying and I get it all dialed in, I'll do some touch-up body work, and then we'll go on to paint and doing weathering and all that stuff. I did pick a paint scheme finally. It's really cool. Can't wait to show you guys. So anyways, I think that'll do it for now. I'll touch back in a little bit later once I get the airplane assembled, and we'll go over the airplane and the radio setup. All right. Okay guys, so I thought I'd just go over some of the control setup with you, since it's not quite stock. And I also thought I'd show you the afterburner lights with the aluminum tape and the tailpipes. So check it out. Yeah, those puppies are bright. All right, so let's start with the wings out. So as you guys know from the factory, the F-14 comes set up with the factory box everything plugs into. It makes it like a regular 7-channel airplane, basically. Well, that's great. A lot of guys make it work. They seem to like it. I flew my first one like that and really didn't care for it. The reason being is when the wings are back, it's way too much control throw, and things just, I don't want to say it's unflyable, but it makes it difficult to fly it with the wings back. And that's kind of the whole point of this airplane. So let's start off with a couple things. So first of all, with my full span flaps. So normally on the stock airplane, you just have inboard flaps. On this one, we have full span flaps. I do have a slightly less amount on the aileron portion. That's to help create a little bit of washout to help prevent tip stalling. But I also mixed in, and you'll see the elevator mix. It's not much, I'll dial it in once I fly it, but there's a little bit of up mix with the flaps. But in order to keep the airplane from tip stalling on flare, which it used to do, I didn't have this in it before, but I experimented with this setting on my F-18, is that I would actually mix in some up into the ailerons with the elevators. And that's to basically create washout and to keep the tip from stalling as much. So I leave that setting in even with the flaps up. Reason being is when you pull on it real hard, being a straight wing, not much washout, this will help keep the wingtips from stalling. It'll also allow the plane to kind of dig in a little bit, which creates the illusion of it being heavier in the air and more realistic as it turns tight turns. So yeah, so I got that. So I got up mixed with that. Also, on the regular airplane, the ailerons work in both directions. Now on the real F-14, the tails are tailerons, and the wing has spoilers on it that only go up, obviously, and the spoilers help it roll. So because we don't have spoilers, one thing we did on, and this is something that Chris Wolf experimented with and that I copied on my first one, and it works excellent, is you basically couple in some up into the aileron, which kind of makes it act like a spoiler, and it's mixed with the tails. So what that kind of does is the real F-14 has a real unique roll, and I think some of that's part in due to the spoilers. So I always thought that my original F-14 had a very realistic roll rate, and the axis of the roll was very realistic, if that makes any sense. So we have that mixed in as well. Another thing, when you put the wings back on this model, if you leave your regular roll settings in, it rolls crazy fast. Like I said, it's not unflyable, but it's you can't fly it smoothly if you don't limit your throws. So There's two things that's going to happen when I sweep the wings. First is you'll notice that there's some up trim that slowly mixes into the elevator, and that's to compensate. As the wings go back, the nose drops down, so you need a little bit of up. So when the wings go back, you'll notice those go back or go up a little bit, and also you'll notice that I will no longer have full roll control, but it's limited to my lowest rate setting. So just check it out. Notice the elevator going up slowly, and it finishes right about the time the wings get back. But now this is my full roll here. That's all I need. And notice that the ailerons still go up just a little bit, because on the real one, even when the wings are back, the spoilers still work to help the airplane roll. So what that allows us to do is continue smooth flying without having to hit rate switches while we're in the middle of sweeping wings. I can promise you that if you don't reduce your rates with the wings back, the roll rate becomes so fast that you'll end up upside down, and if you're low, it's not going to end up pretty. So we get that mix. Now, for whatever reason, I couldn't get the trim change with the wing sweep to happen slowly with the wings going back. I'm not sure why not, but I'm gonna have to live with it. Before I didn't have that at all, so it wasn't that bad. It wasn't too noticeable. But so anyways, that's the setup. I got a rat's nest up here, as any of you other F-14 owners know. Other than that, all the rest of the controls are pretty much the same. Oh yeah, I was going to show you the anhedral and the tails. So earlier I mentioned that the factory free wing tails are flat, and they really shouldn't be. A real F-14 has drooped elevators. Like I said, it's not as much as an F-16, but take a look at some pictures, you'll see it in there. So I went out and taxied it, and I'll show you a couple clips from that. My clipped springs were perfect. It sits just awesome. I also clipped the nose spring to reduce the spring rate in the nose. And what that allows is the nose to collapse more easily. And instead of being super stiff, you'll actually see it kind of bobbing up and down as it taxis, which I think looks cool. So there's these sweet, sweet hubcaps. Look awesome on the plane. And yeah, so we'll end this video with a couple clips of it taxiing. And this is me. I was messing around with my afterburner settings. So I experimented with the hatch change here, and honestly it's not that big of a deal, and in my opinion it looks way nicer than the original hatch setup. So anyways, there she is. She's all pretty much ready to fly. I got a couple things to finish up. Other than that, she's ready to go, and hopefully we'll have a maiden in the next week or so. All right, till next time, we'll see you later.